streamline, organize, and grow your business. Welcome to the One Organized Business podcast. My name is Alaia Williams, and I'm your host. Thanks for joining me. Find past episodes, show notes, and business building resources by visiting oneorganizedbusiness.com. Let's jump right into today's episode. On this episode of the One Organized Business podcast, we're going to be talking all about how to cultivate a planning habit or a habit of planning. Planning is something that people have done since the dawn of time. There are countless things you can plan, from, your meals to what you're going to do today, to a business you're going to launch, to the layout of your garden or landscape architecture. There are countless things that you can plan. Obviously, here on the One Organized Business podcast, we're focused on plans as it relates to your business. And as someone who is a planner and has become comfortable with the process of planning, and as someone who created and sells planners and loves talking about them, this is a topic that I dive into quite often. I'm in Facebook groups where we're talking about planning. I talk about it with colleagues. I talk about it with clients. And, one of the things about planning and planners in particular that's kind of funny to me right now is that planners have become very trendy. There are more planners available now than there have ever been. And again, planners are something that have been around for a very long time. But once something kind of becomes a trend and hits that tipping point, you start to see it everywhere. And what I love about this trend in particular is that I think it's exciting that more people are interested in the idea of planning, and that people are interested in getting organized and staying organized and having a system that supports them in reaching their goals. So I love that people are embracing the planner culture. So in this planning habit episode, there's three things that I want to talk to you about. Three things that will help you cultivate that planning habit, because it's more than just having a planner. It's more than having a Google Calendar. It's more than having a to-do app of some sort. The system itself, the tool itself, the planner itself is not going to get the job done, is not going to change your life. I talked about that in the episode about unpacking organizing myths and challenges. One of the big myths is that I'm going to find the right tool or the right app and it's going to change my life. And there is no magic wand. There's not one tool you can pick up that's going to change everything. That tool can aid you in the actions that you're taking in reaching your goals and seeing your plans become reality, but it's not the tool itself. So the first thing that I want to address is that I think it's important that you plan daily. So if you don't listen any further than this, walk away with that. Plan daily. Plan something daily. There are various studies that have been floating around for probably decades at this point that say it takes anywhere from 21 to 30 days to create a habit. So if you're trying to make planning part of your life and make it a habit, do it for 21 to 30 days. Just give it a try. And I'm sure after that, if you're doing it and it's helping you achieve the results you want to achieve, you'll continue with the practice. So plan a little something every day. I have been planning my day every day since 2011. I was working a day job at a startup. I still had my business on the side. And I had a lot to manage. And even just at my job, I wanted to make sure that I was on top of all the various things I needed to do. So every day I pulled out just a legal pad, a pad of paper, and I wrote down the hours of the day. And I think I just wrote 8, 9, 10 at first. And then I started breaking it down into half-hour chunks. So 8, 8:30, 9, 9:30. I would jot down any solid appointments and then fill in my to-dos in between all that stuff. It was very simple. It used to take me maybe 5 minutes each morning, and then I could get it down to 1-2 minutes. It wasn't that complicated. I got used to coming into work, sitting down and doing that for days. I did it every day, 5 days a week. Every day I was at my job, and then it just became a habit. And then I started doing it on weekends. So even if I didn't have anything special to do, I'd go, okay, grocery store, read this, work on this client thing. I would just jot things down because it was a habit at this point to write down what I intended to do for the day. And that is very, very simply how that habit started for me. So now, even though I take my planner pretty much everywhere, even though I have access to my Google Calendar, I still jot that down, whether it's in my planner, whether it's on note paper, if I somehow forget my planner. But every day I do these just little plans of what I'm going to do. And if I somehow don't get a chance to do it in the morning, there are occasionally those mornings where you wake up so early and just roll into whatever you're doing. I've helped a couple people move recently, or, I've had to deal with some like emergency first thing in the morning. The thing I do when that's done to kind of recenter myself and focus for the rest of the day, same thing, even if I'm starting at 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., I jot down the hours of the day and what I intend to do. It's just a habit. And so now 6, almost 7 years later, that's still something I do. And I can't imagine not planning. So I say that not to say that you need to plan the way I plan, but to decide, what kind of planning you want to do and just do it daily for 21 to 30 days. Just do a little bit of planning. And even if it's not planning your day, maybe spend a little time planning some project that you want to work on. Maybe you're planning a product launch. Maybe you're working on a book. What plans can you make for your book? Either the writing process or the marketing process or both. Writing a book and getting it out there for people to see is a big project. So every day, if you're making plans and checking off action items, you're going to be that much more successful with the creation and launch of your book. So if you take nothing else from this, plan daily. Plan something daily for 21 to 30 days, and that will really help you flex that planning habit. I honestly think that is the biggest thing, because what I'm going to talk about in part 2 here is there are lots of different kinds of plans that you can make, and I'm only scratching the surface. So it's less about the kind of plans you're making and more about the fact that you're making the plans. Because once you get comfortable making the plans, your mind, in my belief, your mind will start to expand and you'll start to think, okay, how can I think bigger? How can I be more strategic? As I mentioned, when I started my daily planning habit in 2011, I was literally just writing what I was doing that day. But then after a couple months, I started thinking, okay, let me do a little pre-planning for tomorrow. And I started planning ahead. So I started dropping in tomorrow's appointments so that when I showed up to work the next day, all I'd have to drop in was the to-dos. So I would kind of think strategically and get myself ahead a little bit. And then when I was fully back in my business again, I started to think a little bigger, like, okay, what's going on this month? What do I want to achieve next month? Or, for example, I knew when I was planning to leave my job. So that's when I started doing a little future planning. So I'm like, okay, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be back as a full-time business owner again. What do I want to launch into when I get there? So I started to pre-plan. And that's really important too. But there's all kinds of plans you can make. The most important thing is to start doing it and build that habit. And then you can grow it in whatever direction serves you after that. All right. So this second part of cultivating a planning habit that I think will be effective and efficient and just helpful for you is to start big and drill down. As I just alluded to, I'm going to talk about various kinds of plans here, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed. All of this can be very easy. It doesn't have to be time consuming. Like many things, we tend to make things more complicated than they need to be. And planning is one of those awesome things that can just be down and dirty and quick. It doesn't have to be long and drawn out and complicated. But you can take as much time as you need to. If you really think you need to sit and reflect and take a lot of time, go for it. And I do encourage that you do that every now and then, but it doesn't have to be all the time. All right. So take a deep breath. There are 7 kinds of planning that I want you to be doing. Not necessarily all at one time, but let's just say in the course of a year. And as I said, we're going to start big and drill down. So the first thing I want you to look at is the next 12 months. What do you want the next 12 months to look like? So whether you're planning for the year ahead and looking at a January through December situation, or you just want to start from where you are and look out 12 months, it doesn't matter. I tend to like starting where I am because I don't believe that I need to wait for an arbitrary date to make plans or get things done. So if it's important to me and I want to push something forward and it's November, why would I wait until January? Unless it's something I don't have access to or like literally cannot do until January. But for most of us, that's not the case. So if I'm sitting down and it's November, I'm going to look at November to October and look at my next 12 months and what I want to accomplish. But if you like working on that calendar year thing, go for it. It's all about what works for you. But look at the next 12 months and decide what you want to accomplish. Again, here on the One Organized Business podcast, we're focused on, your business and business life, but the real world outside of your business exists too. So, what is your overall financial goal? What is your financial goal for your business? And that could be income. It could be revenue. It could be a savings goal. It could be an increase in revenue. It could be an increase in profit. It could be a goal related to reducing expenses, a goal related to reducing overhead. I worked with an agency with a huge office that was half empty for the couple of years that I worked with them. Granted, they were in a lease, but in my mind, that's so much overhead. An office 50% of the size could have possibly saved thousands of dollars a month. When we look at our businesses and we think about increasing our profits, obviously, you can bring in more income, but one way to pocket more money is to reduce your expenses. So many of us set financial goals that are around like doubling our rates or increasing our revenue. But one thing it's important not to forget, for example, are the ways that you can decrease expenses. So maybe your goal is financial. A lot of people do weight loss goals or goals related to their health. They want to stop smoking. They want to exercise more. They want to change their diet. Maybe you want to get organized. That's obviously one I've been hearing over and over and over again for over a decade. But what are your goals for the next 12 months? And you use that annual planning to figure those out. And it's important to set concrete goals. You can find information out there on SMART goals and how to set those. And on the show notes page for this episode, I'll link you to some resources that can help you with your planning there in terms of SMART goals. But set goals that are concrete. So just because you're setting a goal for the next 12 months doesn't mean it has to take you 12 months. It can be a goal for, the next year, but maybe it's something you want to complete in 3 months or 4 or 6. It doesn't have to be something that's going to take you literally 12 months. So keep that in mind. So think of those big annual goals. Another thing that you can do, and I think this is the closest one to optional, is 6-month goals. So same as annual, just looking at half the year. What I prefer to do is what I call, and I didn't come up with this term, but it's the term I use. I prefer to do a mid-year reset. So I don't actually set 6-month goals that often, but when I get halfway through the year, I look at the goals that I set for that 12-month period and I assess where I am. Which ones did I accomplish? What made it easy to accomplish those? And then I spend time looking at the things I didn't accomplish. And that's the time where I ask myself, is this still one of my goals? Is this a priority? If it's not, I either get rid of the goal entirely or shift the time frame. And if it's important to me, I ask myself, am I on track to get it done? Because maybe it was something I planned for the second half of the year anyway. But if I'm off track, I ask myself, what do I need to get it done? What knowledge do I need? What resources do I need to hire someone? What is it? What kind of support do I need to actually get this accomplished? So I like doing that mid-year reset to kind of realign my priorities. The third kind of planning is quarterly planning, 90-day planning. And I love this because sometimes monthly planning just isn't enough when you're trying to future plan, right? So a 90-day plan gives you a nice, amount of time to play with, especially for me when it comes to launching something, for example, especially if it's something you need to create. So I created my planner, the next 12 months, in 2015. And once I had the concept down and I knew what the design was going to be, everything came along pretty quickly. But of course, there were hiccups and lots of things I didn't anticipate, as this was my first physical product. So even though it happened fairly quickly, if I had been more strategic and had thought out not only the creation, but the launch of the planner, a 90-day plan really would have come in handy. Because not only was there the ideation stage and brainstorming and deciding what this planner would be, there was the actual design of it and making sure, the margins were right for the publishing the kind of publishing I was going to do. So for example, the planner is available as a paperback. And so the margins for that are a little bit different than the margins for spiral, that kind of stuff that I hadn't really thought through. And then there was looking for a vendor. And I knew that I wanted to keep production in the US. I knew I wanted to use a small business if I could help it. And so I had to source vendors. And at that point, it would make sense to use someone local. So I had to source print shops in Los Angeles and, find someone who could do binding and finishing, which I had no idea most shops didn't do. Most shops mostly do copies. So it took a while to find a shop that could bind and finish, get a competitive price. And that's still something I'm working on. But that was a process, figuring out how I was going to get this book out there. And then I had to market it, right? I originally created the planner for myself, but I thought, well, if I'm going through all of this to create it for myself, maybe someone else is going to want this too. So I had to come up with a marketing plan and be consistent about marketing. And every year I've gotten better at the marketing of it. But in the beginning, it was all just a jumble and I could only see that I just needed to create it. And I didn't see all the other pieces around it. And I knew that I wanted it done by, August 2015. And it was. When I got the proof, I was so excited. But if I had stopped and created a 90-day plan, I could have worked all those things in and felt a little less scattered and rushed during the launch of it, because I could have planned out, while I'm waiting on the proof, research or get help researching local print shops, and create a marketing plan for this, create the social copy, create some images. Like I could have been taking my time and thinking that through, or thinking who I could delegate that stuff to. And I just wasn't. All I could see was August. And that may work for some things, but for this kind of launch, a 90-day plan would have been super helpful. And it doesn't just, when you do quarterly plans, it doesn't have to just be for product launches. But I just give that as an example of a place where it would have been great for me to think a little bit bigger and think a little bit more long term. So quarterly 90-day plans are great. Same thing, again, if you're working on some kind of habit, like we talked about creating a planning habit and doing it for 21 to 30 days. I think when you're trying to make changes in your business, big changes, or you're trying something new, I think 60 to 90 days to try something out can be a lot better than 30. So I'm not talking about habits at this point. I'm talking more like if you are implementing a new process in your business or some new major system, giving yourself 60 to 90 days to see if it works. Because, first 30 days, you're kind of onboarding, getting the kinks out, getting used to using it every day. And you're just barely getting that rhythm, when you hit that 30-day mark. So if you're making big changes in your business, like 60 to 90 days is probably a good time to test something out. So plan out that test, plan out that launch. The next kind of planning that's really important is monthly planning. This is one that, as we drill down, this is where it starts to get more familiar and more common and much more likely that you're doing this. But this is where you look at the month, this month that we're in, or next month, or depending on how you're jumping on it. But setting your monthly goals. What do you want to accomplish this month? What are your big goals for the month? And I would say keep it at 3 or less. And that's one thing I want to back up and say about goals is oftentimes when you aren't planning strategically, Your goal list looks like a to-do list, and it shouldn't. We'll talk about to-do lists in a little bit. But if you want to do 18 things this month, it's no wonder you're feeling overwhelmed. It's no wonder you get to the end of the month and go, what have I accomplished? You only have 30 days. 30 days is not that many, especially if your goals are big or they're time consuming or they're not something you can sit down and bang out in one shot. So when you're doing your monthly goals, I suggest 3 goals max. If you can get it down to 2 or 1, even better. And that's not going to say that you're going to just do one thing, but you have 1 or 2 big goals or things to focus on. And along with those monthly goals, it's important to review your monthly goals. So when you finish this month, do a review, please, before you do detailed planning for next month. You may have pre-planned a little, but go in and tweak those plans. It's important to know where you are and what happened and how things work before you plan ahead. Because if you keep doing things the same way you've been doing them, we've all heard that phrase pretty much, you'll get the same results you've been getting. So at the end of every month, use it as an opportunity to do a review before you plan ahead. And after you do monthly goals, do weekly goals. Weekly planning is so important. This gives you the opportunity to set priorities. For easy math, I'm going to say, let's say you have 4 goals for a month. Average, you're hoping to achieve one of those goals a week. Doing weekly goals allows you to prioritize what gets done and when. So you can look at a 5 or 7 day period and determine what you need to do to achieve that goal. So for example, if my goal is to, oh my gosh, I don't even know. I'm trying to think of one goal I can accomplish in a week, which is why I say for monthly, it's great to drill down to 1 or 2 goals. Because it's hard, if something is a big goal, it's hard to crank it out in a week sometimes. So I'll just use this podcast as an example. This podcast was pretty easy for me to launch because I have launched 2 podcasts prior to this. So if I want to get this launched this week, if it's Monday and I'm looking at getting this out by, I'm going to be generous and know that I'm going to work 7 days a week. If I am starting Monday and I know I want to get this launched on Sunday, I know that I need to record the episode Monday, get it to my editor immediately so that he can take his time to edit the show the way I want it to be edited. So to edit the content, which hopefully he doesn't have to do too much on. I laugh because I know he listens to every episode while he edits. Adding the intro music, the outro music. And then because I don't have an assistant on my podcast right now, not this time around, I know when I get that edited episode back, it'll probably be a couple days later. So in the meantime, while my editor's doing his job, I need to be creating the show art and the show notes. I need to create the tags. So as soon as I get the episode back, I can tag it. And then I need to upload the episode. And if I want to make sure that people beyond my subscribers and, even my subscribers know that it's out, I need promotional copy. So I need to write social media copy, or if I'm mentioning it in my newsletter, I need to write a line about that. I need to get the episode published. I need to take the code for the episode and, stick it in the page so that when people land on the website, they can play the episode from right there. So there's all these little pieces. And if I want to get my podcast launched inside of a week, and that's just 1 episode, that's not even to say the whole show, right? So if I want to get that launched inside of a week, I need to prioritize all those tasks and know when they're getting done. And that's what weekly planning helps you do. It helps you drill down and focus. And I, especially for weekly plans, really encourage you to have 1 focus or big goal. I had to push other things aside to get this podcast launched in the time frame that I wanted it to launch. I wanted it to launch in November very specifically. Not because I felt like November had significant value, but I knew I didn't want to do it during the, holiday rush of December. And I knew I didn't want to wait until the new year. But August and September, I was dealing with a lot of work projects. I had some speaking gigs, which were great. And so November was this nice window of I'm right between speaking gigs, but I'm getting ready to launch some stuff, but I have enough downtime to do what I know I need to do to get this out there. So November was strategic and it came together pretty quickly, but that's because I planned and I knew what I wanted to do. Of course, logically, after your weekly goals, the next thing to do is set daily goals. You can do this in your weekly planner. You can do this on your Google Calendar. You can do this wherever when you're doing that daily planning that I mentioned. But jot down every day your plans. You don't have to get as detailed as me. I just, again, give you an example of what has worked for me. But jotting down my daily goals and what I'm going to do for the day is an important habit. And even if it's, a Saturday or Sunday or a weekday where I don't have much work to do, how rare is that, right? I'll jot down, plan. I actually do write plan on my daily planning. So I'll write down, 7 a.m. plan. But, I write down that I'm going to plan. I write down that I'm going to take a nap. I write down that I'm going to take a walk. And I know that sounds really bland. And if you're not used to daily planning, it may sound pointless. But for me, it's about not breaking the habit. So it's just easier to not have that judgment. I don't even think about it anymore. I literally just jot those things down and I can plan my day now in 60 seconds. You can take 60 seconds to set yourself up for success on a daily basis. I know you can. So, back to the first thing we talked about, planning daily. It does not have to take a long time. You can sit and meditate and reflect and journal. And I am not saying that facetiously. Like, you can make that part of your process. I know many people that do, and that's great. But I don't want you to think that you have to do that. Your planning can be 5 minutes or less a day. It's more about the fact that you're doing it and being intentional and you've created a habit around it, not necessarily how much time you're spending. It's that same thing with organizing. When I talk to people about organizing, it's not necessarily that you are spending 5 hours every day struggling and feeling stressed and overwhelmed while you organize. It's spending 15 minutes a day and making those little changes. And then when you're in the habit of 15, you start to know that, okay, if I want to make like bigger moves, I need to up this 15 to 30. I need to up it to 60. Or, I'll do 15 minutes a day. And then every Saturday I'll spend an hour. But you start to get bigger and you get more strategic and you start to make bigger moves. So, your planning habit can be quick. It can be long. It doesn't matter. It's more about the fact that you're doing it every day. And then aside from the daily planning, a little subset of it is your to-do list. And as I mentioned before, oftentimes, and I get it, as entrepreneurs, we have no shortage of ideas. The problem is when we treat our goals like a to-do list and we just create a laundry list of things we want to do. And then we're scattered here, we're scattered there. I call it entrepreneurial ADD. We hop from project to project to project, to task to task to task. And we're doing a lot, but we're not getting a lot done. And it's because there's no focus, because our goals aren't clear, because we haven't set priorities, and we're treating our goals like a to-do list. Your goals and your goal list are not the same as your to-do list. Your to-do list is, yes, all the little things you need to do, but it's also, keeping track of the tasks that support your daily goals, which support your weekly goals, which support the monthly goals, which, feed into the quarterly goals, which go into those mid-year and annual goals, right? So backing up, I said there were 7 things, and I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but I want you to see the big picture here. It's kind of like a funnel or a reverse funnel. However, you want that funnel to fall or point. But you've got your big annual goals. You drill down a step for 6 months, or you do that mid-year reset. You drill down a little more into the quarterly goals, a little more into the monthly goals, down again into the weekly, into the daily, and into your action and to-do list. Each level feeds the next one. So start big and drill down. So the first thing was plan daily. Next was start big and drill down. Last but not least, have systems that support you in this. Have a planner. We talked about planners and how popular they are right now. If a planner's not for you or a trendy planner is not for you, that's fine. You don't need a fancy planner. Those tend to be more for those of us who, who are into that sort of thing, or who are looking for a framework from which to do their planning. So again, I created a line of planners. They're called The Next 12 Months. They're designed for business owners, and there's very specific things in them. So the 90-day planner has daily planning pages. The weekly planner has a marketing tracker and boxes to do planning every day of the week, but also to set your weekly priorities and your main focus. There are other planners out there that are great for business owners that just have like an hourly layout or a weekly layout with big empty boxes, and you can make it whatever you want. So a planner, there's so many great ones out there. I know it can be overwhelming. On the show notes page, I'll link to my post on the best planners for small business owners so that you can explore a little bit if you think that might be something for you. But choosing the right planner, it's about finding one that has a format that fits how you want to plan. And your planner should support you in that. And if you feel like that's too complex or you don't want to spend the money or, whatever, I don't care. You don't need a planner. A planner is not the most important part. A planner is just a tool. Get a notebook. Do it in a project management tool. Do it on your Google Calendar. I don't really care where you do it. I care that you have picked a tool and that you use it regularly. As I mentioned, when I started my daily planning habit in 2011, I was just using a legal notepad from the office. I just jotted everything down, flipped to the next page the next day. Actually, I did multiple pages on one day. I'm kind of a tree hugger that way. I didn't want to waste paper. So I planned a couple days on one page, flipped it over, planned the next couple of days. It took me a long time to go through one of those legal notepads. It can be as simple as that. But have a system that supports yourself. Do your planning in one place. Make it easily accessible. That's why when it comes to planners, there was one that I used that I loved, but it was so big. And so when I was home all the time, it was fine. But when I started co-working other places and going back on site to see clients, it was cumbersome to take around. So it was important for me that I had a planner that had everything I wanted and was also portable. And that's around the time I created mine. But whatever you're using, a planner, a notebook, your Google Calendar, it should be easily accessible. You should have it handy wherever you are so that you can plan anytime or access your plans anytime. And that's really it. I know I went through a lot of kinds of plans, but I hope you can see how valuable they are. And again, you don't have to spend a lot of time. The biggest thing is starting to plan something daily and cultivating that habit. And you'll get faster and more efficient at this as you go along, especially once it becomes a habit. Start big and drill down. And finally, have systems that support you in cultivating this planning habit. So on the show notes page for this episode, I will link you to how to do a monthly review that's quick and easy, my best planners for small business owners post, how to set SMART goals. So those additional resources will be there to support you. So just head over to oneorganizedbusiness.com and you'll find all of that there. So I hope this episode was helpful. And I'm excited that you're going to be cultivating a planning habit. And if you ever have questions or want to talk to me about it, just head over to oneorganizedbusiness.com or alaiawilliams.com, hit that contact me button and just share your story. I would love to hear how your process is going, and I'd love to help you if you have any questions. Thanks for tuning in. That's it for this episode of the One Organized Business Podcast. You can find show notes, business building resources, and links to past episodes at oneorganizedbusiness.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next episode.